Welcome to today's Explainer. You know, every single species on this planet has spent literally millions of years adapting to Earth. Fish developed gills to breathe underwater. Birds evolved hollow bones to fly. Polar bears grew thick fur to survive the Arctic. And then there's us. We burn in our own sunlight. Our spines are practically falling apart. We give birth in a process so violent it kills us more than any other mammal on the planet. And we are the only species that looked around at the world it evolved in and thought, something's off. Today we are unraveling a cosmic detective story to figure out exactly why our species seems so incredibly strange compared to everything else on Earth. Seriously, what if the reason we don't fit on Earth is because we aren't from here? I mean, just think about how other animals interact with the outdoors. Lizards will sit in direct sunlight for hours. Dogs, cats, horses, elephants, these spend their entire lives under the exact same sun and handle it just fine. Their fur, their scales, their pigmentation, they're all perfectly calibrated for our star. But ours isn't. We literally had to invent a chemical paste and rub it all over ourselves just to go outside safely. Think about that for a second. We invented sunscreen because our own sun is actively trying to kill us. Okay, let's dive into this, because when you look at our physical blueprint, humans start to look like really badly designed creatures for this planet. We've got fragile skin that burns, failing spines, incredibly dangerous reproduction, and widespread allergies. But the strangest part isn't even physical. It's in your head. No other animal on Earth knows it's going to die. Dogs don't lie awake wondering what happens after death. Dolphins don't have existential crises. Elephants don't build entire religions to cope with the terror of mortality. But we do, all of us. We are the only species walking around with the full awareness that one day we'll just stop existing. And instead of just dealing with it naturally, we've spent our entire history trying to solve it. We build temples, we write philosophies, we create entire civilizations organized around the question of what happens when we die. What survival advantage does existential dread actually provide? It feels like a feature you'd find in a species that's totally out of place, conscious enough to sense something is wrong, but unable to figure out exactly what. Now, let's talk about your back. 80. That is the percentage of humans who will experience chronic back pain at some point in their lives. 80%. When 4 out of 5 members of your species share the exact same structural problem, you kind of have to stop blaming the individual and start looking at the blueprint. Our spines are essentially a horizontal bridge that evolution tried to clumsily stand upright. The discs between our vertebrae compress under gravity in ways they were literally never meant to handle. Other true bipedal animals, like kangaroos or ostriches, they don't have this issue. Their bodies were built from the ground up for standing. Ours were retrofitted. And honestly, badly. Then there's childbirth. And wow, this one is rough. Human childbirth is the most dangerous birth process of any mammal on the planet. Our babies' heads are so big they barely fit through the birth canal. Before modern medicine, giving birth was one of the leading causes of death for women throughout all of human history. No other species routinely dies trying to deliver healthy offspring. That is just us. Contrast that with a horse. A horse gives birth in about 30 minutes, and the foal is standing up and walking within the hour. Meanwhile, a human baby can't even hold up its own head for months. We show up completely useless, dependent on others for years, and way more helpless than any other animal that has ever existed on this planet. And then there are allergies. Your immune system has one primary job, right? Protect you. But in humans, this system regularly goes to absolute war against things that are completely harmless on Earth. Pollen, peanuts, dust, cat hair, shellfish. About 30% of the global population has an immune system that attacks the air they breathe and the food they eat. It really begs the question, did evolution just make a massive mistake? Or is your body actually calibrated for somewhere else entirely? Beyond our biology, consider our behavior. Every other species on this planet exists in some kind of balance with its ecosystem. Predators keep prey in check, prey keeps plant life in check, decomposers recycle nutrients back into the soil. It's this beautiful closed loop where everybody plays their part. Except us. We clear-cut forests, we poison rivers, we pump the atmosphere full of gases that heat the planet, we've driven thousands of species to extinction, and we're not even close to slowing down. We aren't participating in Earth's ecosystem. We are actively taking it apart. And if you really think about it, that behavior is exactly what you would expect from an invasive species. Something dropped onto a planet it wasn't built for, completely unaware of the rules because the rules just weren't written for it.
So if we really don't belong here, where did we come from? Well, this brings us to suspect number 1. Back in 1973, Francis Crick published a paper that absolutely should have shaken the scientific world. Now, he had just won the Nobel Prize in 1962 for figuring out how the molecule that carries all of life's instructions, DNA, actually works. He's literally one of the most important scientists who ever lived, and in that 1973 paper, written alongside chemist Leslie Orgel, he proposed something wild. He called it directed panspermia. It's the hypothesis that life on Earth didn't start here at all, but was deliberately seeded by an intelligent civilization from somewhere else in the galaxy. Yes, the man who decoded DNA looked at how we fit in and decided the story of life on Earth just didn't add up.
And you can kind of see why Crick was so suspicious when you look at the sheer speed of it all. The Earth formed roughly 4.5 billion years ago, but complex organic life appeared just 700 million years later. The planet was still cooling from being a molten hellscape of rock and toxic gas, getting absolutely hammered by asteroids, and somehow life just popped up almost the exact second conditions allowed for it. In geological time, 700 million years is basically overnight. Biologists have always found this impossibly fast timeline incredibly suspicious.
And this brilliantly illustrates how life could actually travel here much easier than we originally thought. In 1969, the Murchison meteorite crashed into Australia, and inside it, over 90 different amino acids, the fundamental building blocks of life, just casually riding through space on a rock. We also know that extremophiles like tardigrades can easily survive the freezing vacuum of space and intense cosmic radiation. Some even survived a lunar crash in 2019 and might still be sitting up there on the moon. So life doesn't just have to miraculously start on Earth, the building blocks are perfectly capable of hitching a ride between worlds. This whole alien theory gained traction again relatively recently. In 2013, ecologist Dr. Ellis Silver published a book titled Humans Are Not from Earth. He essentially pulled together all of our physiological quirks, the back pain, the sunburns, the bizarrely difficult childbirth, our weird circadian rhythms that don't perfectly match a 24-hour cycle, and he argued that these aren't just minor evolutionary hiccups. He proposed they are definitive, physical signs that we originated on another world entirely.
So that settles it, right? We're aliens. Case closed. Well, actually, scratch that. We have to abruptly halt the alien theory right here, because we need to introduce suspect number 2, the mainstream biological consensus. Because as incredibly fun as the extraterrestrial theory is, mainstream science actually has a highly rational, totally earthbound answer for almost every single one of our physical flaws. The absolute crucial piece of the puzzle here is a concept called evolutionary mismatch. See, evolution moves incredibly slowly. We only started walking upright about 6 million years ago. Now, that sounds ancient to us, but in biological terms, it means our bodies just haven't had enough generations to fully adapt. We are basically walking around in a biological prototype that hasn't received its final software update. This mismatch results in traits that used to help us survive in the past, but in our newly changed environment, they just cause us pain. Let's apply this mismatch theory to the whole sunburn problem. Way back when, our ancestors moved from heavily shaded forests out into the baking open savannas of Africa. Now, to cool down while running for hours, we needed to sweat efficiently. And sweat evaporates much, much better on bare skin than through thick fur. So we essentially traded our protective coats for the ability to become the ultimate endurance runners, capable of outrunning practically every other animal on the planet. The sunburn? Well, that's just the unfortunate physiological price we pay for our incredible stamina. Okay, but what about childbirth? Scientists call this the obstructic dilemma. As our ancestors evolved, 2 massive things were happening at exactly the same time. Evolution was trying to make our brains much bigger and smarter while simultaneously restructuring our pelvises so we could walk upright. These 2 evolutionary goals were basically on a collision course. The human pelvis just got caught in the messy, dangerous middle. It's really rough, but purely from a biological engineering perspective, it actually makes perfect sense. Even our behavior as a so-called invasive species can be demystified here. We evolved in tiny, isolated groups on the vast savanna, where natural resources felt practically endless compared to our really small numbers. Because of that, our brains became completely hardwired for short-term survival. We simply aren't wired for the long-term management of an entire planet's interconnected ecosystem. So, we aren't alien invaders, we're just an animal that became way too powerful, way too fast for its own ancient wiring to properly manage. But here is where we drop our final, unsolved clue in this explainer. Mismatch theory handles our physical quirks beautifully. It totally explains the back pain, the sunburns, the childbirth. But it utterly fails to account for the most staggering anomaly of all, the timeline of our minds. No other species in the 4 billion-year history of this planet has ever done what our minds have done in such an impossibly short amount of time.
Just compare our timeline to the pace of animal intelligence. Dolphins evolved roughly 50 million years ago. They are incredibly smart and social, but in all that time, they have never built a single tool. Chimpanzees figured out how to use sticks about 4 million years ago, and guess what? They haven't filed a single technological upgrade since. Every other intelligent species develops gradually, slowly, over tens of millions of years. And then there's us, the human sprint. We went from banging pieces of flint together to landing robots on Mars in what amounts to a geological blink of an eye. Just 200 years ago, we had no railroads. 125 years ago, no airplanes. 75 years ago, space travel was pure fiction. 35 years ago, no internet. Nothing in the entire history of life on Earth has ever accelerated like this. We went from being regular prey animals on the savannah to running the entire planet in virtually zero evolutionary time.
Now, scientists have proposed several biological accelerants to try and explain this rapid rise. Maybe it was the development of language. Maybe it was the discovery of cooking our food, which unlocked massive amounts of calories to fuel rapid brain growth. Some point to a specific genetic mutation in the FOXP2 gene that unlocked complex speech. Or perhaps it's our unique ability to teach and stack knowledge across generations. But here's the catch. Even when you combine all of these theories together, they still don't fully explain the sheer, unprecedented speed of our technological explosion. The truth is, modern evolutionary biology can explain pieces of our story, but absolutely not the whole thing. The most honest answer science can give us right now is simply, we don't fully know. We've got pieces, we don't have the full picture. And honestly, that is exactly what science is supposed to do. Ask the uncomfortable questions, and be perfectly honest when the answers aren't completely clean or finished. So we are left with this incredible mystery. We are almost certainly a product of this planet, but we are also undeniably the strangest thing this planet has ever produced. A species that burns in its own sunlight, breaks under its own gravity, and spends 200,000 years building rockets and telescopes just to stare back into the sky. Is that restlessness a flaw in our evolution, or is it a clue? Because if we truly are not from here, then we've been trying to find our way home for 200,000 years, and we don't even know it.